Hello once again, I am Cosmic, and today I'm going to be reviewing Warhammer End Times Vermintide, which is an asymmetrical cooperative first-person shooter with an emphasis on melee combat. Now, the game has been developed by Fat Shark, who have a spotted track record with games like War of the Roses, War of Vikings, and Escape Dead Island. Set in Games Workshop's Warhammer Fantasy IP during an apocalypse event known as the End Times, the game takes place in the Empire city of Ubersreich during a Skaven invasion. The city swarms with the Skaven, and you, amongst other heroes, mount a defense against the tides, working from the Red Moon Inn, which is a tavern protected from the Skaven by magic. Now, the game is essentially a 4-player co-op game, very much in the style of Left 4 Dead, however with more of a focus on story-driven, objective-based levels and melee combat. In fact, it is these differences alone that make Vermintide so much more enjoyable to play, in my opinion. The overall story of the game progresses as you complete each mission. However, what's far more enjoyable is that the well-voiced characters during each level will talk and interact with each other, often commenting on a good attack, but occasionally there will be lines of conversation about the current situation, the mission, or each other. And these lines of dialogue are not only voiced really well, but they are more importantly well written. They are often hilarious, fun, and keep the entire affair very entertaining. Now, before we get into the mechanics of the game, I cannot express how disappointed I am that the full release does not feature a versus mode similar to that of Left 4 Dead's. It would have been the perfect opportunity to really add some longevity and fun into the game, and its absence is not only a disappointment, but it's a blaringly obvious missed opportunity, essentially to create a multiplayer community that would stick around for some time to come. Now, there are 5 playable characters in Vermintide, each with their own set of available weapons. Each character plays differently and is usually proficient at a certain role. For example, the soldier makes a great tank, or my personal favourite, the witch hunter, is a damage dealer who is very good at killing armoured opponents. Each character has 2 weapon sets equipped at any one time, usually a ranged and a melee weapon. Each character does have several different types of weapons available in the game, so they can each be tailored to a different style of play. The way these characters have been designed seems to allow for both asymmetrical, diverse play, all the while having them be as flexible as possible, so that if you particularly like the soldier but don't like tanking, you can play the soldier as a damage dealer. The combat in Vermintide focuses heavily on melee, which is very difficult to get right when it comes to the FPS genre. Very few games have managed to achieve decent first-person melee combat. This is what I thought the game's biggest stumbling block would have been, and I thought that Fat Shark would follow in the footsteps of many others in delivering very subpar first-person melee combat. Instead of what I thought would have been the game's most obvious flaw, has turned out to be the game's most pleasurable surprise. Is it perfect? No. Both the ranged and melee have their issues. First, it can seem that hits don't register on occasion, and there was plenty of times that I was sure that pistol shot should have hit, but it didn't. The feedback on the melee still doesn't quite have enough oomph behind it for me, meaning that basic attacks often feel like they are sometimes hitting air rather than actual rat flesh. That being said, the combat overall is tense, it's accessible, and it's fun, all the while still being skill-based and having a good degree of difficulty entwined. The Skaven themselves work similar to the zombies from Left 4 Dead in that you have your run-of-the-mill Skaven, which are essentially the clan rats. Then you also have the various special Skaven from the armoured storm vermin, the Gatling gun-wielding rattler, to the poison gas-bombing Globadier. These specials will take teamwork to take down, and each will use different tactics, such as the Packmaster, who will pull one of you away from the team, leaving them to be attacked in isolation. The enemies are really well designed and they are fairly balanced, and they do provide a large challenge, especially at the higher difficulty settings. Various items can be used in combat, such as potions and bombs. These items can be found throughout the levels, and they often pull you out of a tight spot. Should the inevitable happen, however, and one of your teammates gets taken down, you do have time to revive them. However, should they not be revived in time, they will be gone for a period of time, but they can be rescued and thus respawned later on in that same level. After successful completion of a mission, you can roll the dice for a chance at various loot. Extra loot dice can be obtained in levels, and the more successful rolls equals the better and better rarity of the loot that you will get. There's a good amount of weaponry available in the game, and the better quality items are often upgradable that will have various status effects imbued into them. As you level up, you'll also gain a piece of equipment each time, and while leveling up doesn't change your base stats or anything, I certainly do like the progression system, as its design and limitations are appropriate for this type of game. The progression and loot not only reinforces the Warhammer theme, but it also expands upon what Left 4 Dead did. In Left 4 Dead, I always felt constricted by what weapon I could use because they were so limited, and each character played the same role. However, in Vermintide, the game allows me to have different options for each character, and it allows each player to play differently from one another. One of the major pluses about the game is the levels and their respective design. Vermintide features 13 levels, all set in different locales in and around Ubersreich. The level design is impressive, and levels are large, with some missions being fairly long, taking 30 minutes or more to complete. In Left 4 Dead, it was about getting from point A to point B and just surviving. In Vermintide, however, the level design is based around the objectives, and what this creates is not only a large dark Warhammer world, but also levels essentially now have multiple layers to them. On one hand, you have to survive the hordes of the Skaven. On the other hand, you have to complete your objectives, and even then, once those objectives are complete, you still have to escape the level. Often levels have several objectives, everything from holding onto a location to breaching a giant city gate with explosives. One level in particular that I was impressed with was the Wizard's Tower, in which rooms would have illusion spells on them, which would essentially shift things, and rooms would be upside down, etc., which was for a time very disorientating, but it was hilarious fun with the team I was with. Graphically, Fat Shark have done a great job with both the world and the characters. Everything looks authentic and pleasing, but for me, what was most impressive was the character animations and the gore. A dying Skaven has several death animations depending on how he was killed. Decapitation looks great and gory, but stabbing a clan rat through the neck with my rapier and then watching him clutch his throat as he hits the floor was fantastic, and it was very rare to see that kind of quality death animations. I mentioned the great voice acting earlier, but that quality also extends to the soundtrack and the various sound effects. Audibly, the game is top notch, and to be honest, visually the game is top notch. There is very little to complain about on both respects. Overall, I think that Vermintide is a game that should definitely be in your collection if you're a fan of Left 4 Dead, Warhammer, or just enjoy a good multiplayer co-op game. Fat Shark have really pulled off a quality title here, which, to be honest, I was fairly skeptic about. And to be honest, it is one of the best Warhammer Fantasy games to date. I'm disappointed with the length of the game. I would have liked more levels. And to be honest, the exclusion of a versus mode is a huge letdown for me. However, it should say something that I do want to play more of this game. That being said, for the price tag of $27, you are certainly getting a great game that is fun to play. And sure, while it's not perfect and it does have its flaws like any other game, it is one of the best FPS melee games in a long time, and it's something that should not be passed up if you have the opportunity to get it. And that is my review of Warhammer End Times Vermintide. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Do like, subscribe and leave a comment. Let me know what you think about the game, and I'll see you next time.